Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the first episode of the Mzanzi Hustle podcast, the podcast where we speak to our fellow South Africans to try and dissect their careers and behaviors to better understand what it is that makes them successful at what they do. Today I'm speaking to Duncan, owner of Bellezar, a restaurant on the Umhlanga beach and promenade. We speak about the difficulties of owning a restaurant during the lockdown, how the government has failed restaurant owners, as well as what you can do to support your local restaurants. Without further ado, enjoy the show.
So, first of all, let's start off with what is it you do specifically in the restaurant industry? What job do you, what is it you do in the restaurant industry?
Andrea, I own a restaurant in Umhlanga Rocks. The name of the restaurant is called Bellezar on the Rocks. It's a beach cafe based on the main Umhlanga promenade in Umhlanga. I'm also the spokesperson for the Hilisa Alliance. The Hilisa Alliance was an alliance formed during the COVID period, which focused specifically on the interests of the hospitality, entertainment, leisure industries of South Africa. Those are industries that are not necessarily represented by one representation or association within South Africa, but are fragmented types of related industries that don't necessarily have a governing body that look after them and their interests within the marketplace.
Okay, and how long have you owned a restaurant for? And at this association you speak of, did you start that recently now with the COVID stuff? Because I think that's what you said, right? It started from the beginning of the lockdown and the entire
I've been involved in the hospitality industry for a good 20 years, and been involved in the restaurant industry. I grew up in the restaurant industry. My parents owned restaurants since I was a baby. So, I think while they were serving tables, I was maybe putting the cot underneath the bar counter type of thing. So the hospitality industry is in my blood, and the restaurant industry is in my blood as per se. I also have a passion for eventing, and also have a passion for creative, innovative, and inspirational type of activities related to improving our industries, whether it be a restaurant or whether it be events or whether it be leisure or whether it be hospitality in general.
Yeah, okay. When you first heard about the lockdown, what were your first thoughts? Did you immediately go, "This is going to be bad," or were you optimistic, or what were your thoughts?
Well, it was quite a strange issue. I mean, we based at a resort. My restaurant's based at a resort, which at the time of the lockdown had, I would say, a 50% to 60% occupancy of foreign nationals that were staying at the resort at the time. So during the build up to, let's say between the 1st and the 15th of March, there was suddenly a huge influx of people there was like rumors, if you can call it that, rumors that were floating around between the people that were living in the resort at the time, that were on vacation in South Africa, that their home countries were suffering from pandemics, and this COVID virus, or this coronavirus as it was called at the time, was sort of infiltrating the European market, and a lot of the people were concerned about them returning back home, in respect to like Italy, Germany, and other European countries at the time. So there was definitely a undercurrent going on between the guests at the hotels where we were at, and I could see concern. I could see concern for their families, their businesses. You could see they were starting to look at flights. They were looking at how to get back home earlier, cut their vacation earlier, and also their loved ones that were in other countries were starting to get affected. We had some staff members that had their staff family were in Italy, and they then started coming to us and saying, listen, they feel concerned about working in the environment that we're in, because they can see what the effects are they're having in the hospitality industry in Italy itself. So there was sort of like a slow but almost immediate movement for silence in the restaurant industry. I mean, we were immediately. We could see immediate drop in people coming to visit us in the restaurant. We could see people were starting to cancel events, birthday parties, functions, and it was slow. It wasn't a what do you call it, a everybody today gonna do it, but you could see it was starting to happening. Turnover was starting to drop. It was the week before the school holidays, the 22nd of March. The president made an announcement. Now, the resort I'm based in is a resort that runs is a timeshare resort that runs from a Saturday to Saturday. So people had just arrived on the Saturday at the resort for their new week of holiday, and then the Sunday, the 15th, the president makes an announcement. The first announcement is that restaurants and taverns, pubs, people in the industry will have limited hours in terms of serving alcohol. And if you recall, there was a 50-seater capacity put on place on us. So you must remember that I own a 500-seater capacity. And a 500-seater capacity suddenly becomes a 50-seater capacity is a massive issue, in terms of a drop in numbers and a drop in revenue. We managed it, but we had to obviously rearrange reservation times. We had to rearrange staff schedules. It was a massive inconvenience for us in terms of what we were doing. And then obviously the liquor kicked in at 6 o'clock, and then it created a mass pressure on us to be able to serve people in that last few minutes between 4:30 and 5 o'clock, because you have to whip away the wine glass of the person and the bottle of beer on the table, because 6 o'clock's coming and you might get a fine if there's alcohol served on the table, which had legal repercussions for all of us. So at that point in time, but from the president's announcement, it then just became a snowball of panic almost, in terms of the hotel guests in the resort and the resorts around me. So in the strip of resorts around me, we have 5 main hotels that rely predominantly at that time on international and foreign tourists. And suddenly the tourists were suddenly scattering. We need to get back home. The USA put in an embargo in terms of flights from Europe to America, and immediately as that came about, the people started panicking. Not panicking in a way, but you could see there was major concern from their perspective to get back home. So in the last week, we rolled it out another week, and thinking that South Africa was, our president gave us the assurance that the country is going to be safe. We're doing everything in our power to mitigate the risk of COVID-19. We're putting measures in place, sanitize, all those precautionary measures were put in place. But then came the announcement that we are going to go into lockdown on the 26th. And that created everybody that was in a mid-holiday in the resorts where we are. Suddenly, we have to get home, whether we have to get home to Bethlehem, or whether we have to get home to Bethel, whether we have to get home to Bredasdorp or to Amsterdam. We have to get home. And the guests started leaving in droves from the hotels. Our hotel has approximately normally around about 1,000 guests in it at any given point in time. The hotel next to us has normally about 1,000 guests. The hotel down the road from us has normally within a 2 or 3 kilometer radius, we have about 15,000 bed nights that suddenly just became vacant. And our breakfasts became fewer, and our lunches became less, and our dinners became even less on that. We also had, combined with that, the problem of staff saying, listen, the government said you have to return to your place of home. And many of our staff come from the Eastern Cape, some come from Zimbabwe, some of them come from all over the world. And they were put in the position saying, listen, president has told me I need to go to my home. So I need to it takes 2 days to travel down to the Eastern Cape from where I am, or it takes 3 days to travel back to Zimbabwe. I need to get home. So our staff quotient started also dropping, if you can call it that. So people didn't rock up for shifts. We had to swap around staff, and eventually we got to a point of then 3 days before lockdown having to decide, are we going to be essential services for the people that are stranded here in Umhlanga, and we had the option of staying open for those days, which we went ahead and registered as essential services for, and basically it was to cater for the people that were locked down and couldn't get home before the curfew took place at midnight on the 26th, and we then had some visitors from Sweden and the Netherlands and Russia, and they were stranded in South Africa, and eventually sorry about that, and eventually had to go and were stranded in Umhlanga till the 15th of April. And when their own embassies started telling them, listen, your best chance of success to get back home is to get back to Johannesburg at this point in time. And getting back to Johannesburg, we will then be doing repatriation flights. In fact, I got a message from the one Swedish couple that we looked after COVID, that they only got back home 3 weeks ago. And that's now, I mean, we're looking now in the middle of July. They'd been staying in Johannesburg for the last month and a half during this whole period of time.
Sure. And when you guys registered as an essential service, from a financial standpoint, were you compensated for that? And who would pay for that? Would it be the countries themselves? Or
well, no, I think the essential services permit was put in place by the government to allow people that are required to trade, to facilitate helping those people that can't help themselves during the period of lockdown. So in the same breath as pharmacies, supermarkets, retail stores that were open to be able to feed people, we as a restaurant were then providing room service to the neighboring hotels and accommodation for a certain period of time until the demand waned. And then when the demand waned, we decided, listen, this is a charity initiative that we're creating at the moment. So and our guests are now left. We can now return to the normal state of lockdown that the president imposed.
Okay. So obviously, personally, you were affected quite heavily, considering you lost a massive piece of your income, especially considering that you were based on a resort. As far as
we're still based at the resort, we haven't left yet.
Oh yeah, you're still based in a resort.
Yeah.
Do you feel the government could have handled things differently? And if so, what would you have preferred they do?
Well, I'm a strong believer in communication. I think that communication is a very important tool to allow relationships to be formed and bonded between institutions, entities, government, and society. I think what government did wrong in the beginning was communicate the message to us in the wrong way. When I say they communicate the message, is not communicated in the severity of what the consequences of this would have been to us in the future. I think every South African was quite happy to go into the lockdown because we were under the impression that the lockdown was going to be there to I think the slogan at the time was stay home to stay alive, or stay safe to stay home. I think that was almost the government's point of view. And I think we all revered the government for taking the initiative at the time to protect its citizens, where we could clearly see that the citizens from other countries were in the midst of a massive catastrophe. So I think in the beginning stages, government did the right thing by putting us into quarantine. However, I think from the implementation of their program and the communication of their implementation, I think from there onwards it was an absolute mess. And I think today still the communication and implementation of this whole situation and the repercussions that they have had have been totally bizarre in if you can call it that, in many ways. I can think of hundreds of reasons for bizarreness. That I come across every day.
And specifically towards from a business owner in the restaurant industry perspective, is there something you would have preferred they implement? Do you have anything like that in mind, or?
Well. I mean, I've been asked by many people why at the present moment are restaurants quiet? Why are restaurants empty? Why are restaurants not having customers at this present moment, when restaurants as a whole are one of the safest places, in my opinion, anybody could be. We have sanitary protocols in place that are not COVID related, that are in place on a daily basis, that we have to put in place. We have monthly checks from bio grade companies that look at our safety files. We have huge audits done on a regular basis in terms of our spaces, our places. We have monthly sanitizing rituals that happen. Things that don't even take place in any of the other industries in South Africa. So it's very frustrating for us. The informal trader that has a Apple stand next to the taxi rank is allowed to open and start conducting business before myself and my girlfriend are allowed to come and have dinner at a restaurant and enjoy ourselves for whatever meal we want to cook. So that communication, I think, was lacking severely from the government's point of view from the beginning. Why were restaurants and the cosmetic industry made out to be the killers or the carriers of COVID to the rest of the society? I mean, if you think about it really, from a general man's perspective, the person that's on the street, he's not interested in the legalities and the legitimacies and what's happening with us all. He looks at it and says, hold a second, restaurants are not allowed to open. Bottle stores, bars are not allowed to open. Beauty salons are not allowed to open. There must be a reason the government are not allowing them to open. And look, the restaurant industry are fighting to open up. The beauty industry are fighting to open up. The hairdressers are fighting to open up. The fact that they are fighting to open up means that there must be a reason that government is stopping them from opening. Because they've let the spa down the road open, or they let the Pick and Pay down the road open, or the pharmacy or the discount. But it's the restaurant that obviously is fighting. So the restaurant's obviously the perceived, the more dangerous location. And the irony on this, in the whole intervention process, when you ask where Hilisa came out of the COVID process, is that we believe that we should be proactive to government and engage with government during this lockdown process and give them options of protocols which would put their mind at ease so that we could open our industries earlier and more effectively than other industries along the way. I think that lack of feedback from government and the lack of we looking at your proposal, and then when we've given them a proposal which is much more comprehensive than what the regulations are that they've put in place, and then giving us regulations which it's wash your hands, sanitize, wear a mask. It makes a mockery of the whole process in that has been put in place by and the tireless effort that all our industry leaders from all different associations have put in to get the industry back up and running again.
Sorry, I'm just getting my questions. So you just mentioned some regulations that were put in place by the government to make restaurants and other industries more safer. What were some of the things that they demanded the industry do with regards to specifically restaurants?
Well, I think that the thing that we need to look at firstly is the rollout in terms of phase level 4, level 5, level 4, level 3, and now level 3 advanced we're in at the moment. So the first port of call was in level 4. We were allowed to open takeaways only, takeaways for delivery only. Now, if you can imagine a fine dining restaurant that you go to, that restaurant on the best occasion doesn't do takeaways. So now you have to have a restaurant that does fine dining that suddenly has to be a takeaway establishment to be able to survive, to go forward. And yet, if you think about it, I can walk into my Spar, or I can walk into my Checkers or Pick and Pay, and I can go and buy a takeaway meal from them where I don't have to have any protocol in place and enjoy the whole situation as it is, where we are, type of thing. So I think there was a hypocrisy involved in that issue as well, and immediately restaurants had to become takeaways, which was a bizarre situation. Plus, on top of it, they opened up the bottle stores, and they made the bottle store license and the restaurant person's license the same. So effectively, restaurants became bottle stores and bottle stores became restaurants. So in terms of selling liquor. So you tell me how a restaurant who makes 70% of their revenue, 60 to 70% of their revenue on sale of alcohol and beers and pubs, now suddenly can make that type of money by competing with a bottle store down the road or a macro down the road for the same issue of a takeaway. I mean, it just didn't make sense. It's absurd. It's absurd, and the licensing fees and the liquor license applications that restaurants have to fight for. It's not easy getting a liquor license for a restaurant. It's weeks and months of applications and petitioning and documentation and yearly fees, which effectively just became let's give the Spaza owner or the Bunny Chow takeaway joint down the road, or the hot dog saloon down the road. Suddenly he became a liquor outlet, which was just crazy on that side. So there was no cohesion, I think, in the thought process involved in that. That was the first thing. The other thing also was the impact on the environment suddenly became a massive curve. No one looked at what does it mean that we now suddenly having to bring in the single-use takeaway container element into the environment, because now everybody's suddenly ordering takeaways. 1st of May comes, everybody hasn't had a takeaway for months. So all the polystyrene, all the stuff that everybody has been campaigning for years to get rid of, suddenly comes back onto the foreground, and we're starting to have coffee cups in paper cups and this and this and this. I mean, our restaurant alone initiated an initiative where because of the coffee cups we collect and recycle coffee cups on our own promenade, and then grow vegetables in them to give back to the community, because we were seeing such a massive amount of refuse being built up because people were just discarding these single-use materials, which obviously what they would do because the government has now put them in that place of doing that. So that was the first very, very bizarre rule that came into effect. Then the next bizarre rule afterwards was the issue of being able to sit down in a restaurant. So firstly, it came out, the churches are allowed to gather for 50 people. Then it came out that aeroplanes were allowed to come out with 160 people, with full capacity. Then it came out that taxis can come up with 7 people. And notice that the government never used a formula in any of the calculations of those quantities. There is always a set number of people. 50 people at a funeral, 50 people in a church, 7 people in a taxi, 160 in a plane. There wasn't an algorithm or issue involved. But coming to a restaurant, you don't have a number. So what is it? Why can't we open? No one can give you an answer. Then we get given the choice. Okay, we can open as a restaurant. We can sit down, and there's parameters in place, and it's 50 or less, or whichever is a greater or lesser, depending on the size of your restaurant. But you're not allowed to sell alcohol. Or you can stay as a takeaway establishment, and you can continue selling alcohol. So then the restaurant's now divided. You suddenly you either stay as you were, the takeaway restaurant that you were, and able to sell alcohol on a takeaway for delivery basis, or you remain and open a sit-down restaurant, which you are inherently, but you're not allowed to serve alcohol. And that creates a new set of drama and expectations from our clientele. So a lot of us were caught between, do we become a takeaway? Do we not become a takeaway? Or do we continue becoming a takeaway and then I think the last thing was then those people that decided to go back to sit down again, which is a big leap in faith to suddenly say, listen, I haven't been open for 5 months or 3 months. I'm now going to open. There's no clients around, but I'm going to try my best to open under the capacities and the limitations of clients sitting 2 meters apart from each other, or 1.5 meters as the regulations say. So you and I drive together to the restaurant together. We've sat in the seat next to each other in the car. But when we get to the restaurant, we have to sit 1.5 meters apart from each other with a visor, with a mask. I mean, how romantic can that or how emphatic can that type of hospitality be for me and a friend or anybody to want to enjoy a restaurant in that capacity? And I think the final nail in the coffin was then when the president announced that no alcohol is now to be served. So now the takeaway people that had the option of selling alcohol, suddenly that became a zero. The sit-in people who didn't have the alcohol have now lost hope that they were going to get alcohol at all. And on top of it, there was a curfew put in place, which means that now curfew at 9 o'clock means that staff, takeaways, I mean, I was demonstrating to my restaurant group that Uber Eats, who's one of your main service providers over here, will stop taking orders from restaurants at 7:30 because their staff have to get home to their places to meet the curfew. So again, we've just moved back to the takeaway option right in the beginning of day one, even though we've moved down levels in sorry in lockdown. We've actually just gone back to where we were on May 1st, and today it's exactly the same. Plus, today we've affected obviously now with the higher rate of infection of the COVID virus in our communities. So our staff rotation has to be different. Our precautionary measures have to be different. And the fear of the customer is massive at the moment. Fear of the customer to go sit into a restaurant in a confined space or even get out is massive. People are scared to sit down in a restaurant, and they only want to return again once this COVID pandemic has disappeared. And you must remember that most of the people in the LSM group of 7 to 10 that are restaurant diners are people that are in your 40 to 60-year-old category of age group. And those diners are the ones that are being classed as government as high risk. I think in the Western Cape, they test people from 55 years and older. So your disposable income market suddenly doesn't want to go out to restaurants to put themselves at risk. They rather stay at home. And secondly, the disposable income of the people. I think I saw a statistic yesterday that since the beginning of lockdown, 3.8 million people have lost their jobs. And it's forecast that 1.6 million people will be losing their jobs in the next coming 6 weeks. with industries, social distancing, conforming to the government laws, and the fact that you and I are busy talking on a social distancing remote platform now would not necessarily have been the platform that you and I would have been speaking 2 months ago on, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And personally, have you had to let any of your staff go?
Well, I took a decision at the beginning of the lockdown, which and I started bringing back the staff slowly but surely, with a commitment to the staff that we are one team. We've always been one team at the restaurant. So for me to start shedding the herd, it would be unfair to me, to my staff. So I have always said to the staff from the beginning, it's in our best interest that we try and rebuild as the people come back, staff come back one by one. There's no longer a job description of a waiter. There's no longer a job description of a hostess or a scullery staff member or a chef, a cook, a cleaner, a bottle washer, barman. It's now a general utilities worker and staff member and member of our team, because the barman now needs to be able to make sushi. And I'm using extreme examples, but the cook now needs to be able to be a front of house server, and the waiter now needs to be able to be a driver. So we slowly but surely brought back our staff that had the broadest scope of capacity and capabilities that could be utilities, so that we could generate more and more business, so that we could bring more and more and more staff back slowly but surely. And I promise you, it's a very, very, very difficult battle to do, because who do you choose to come back, who do you not choose to come back? I mean, the government's regulation of people coming on of declarations of only coming to work on one form of transportation to work and going home on one form of transportation to work, with a maximum of 7 people in each of the taxis, it puts a burden on the people. Plus, I've also got staff still sitting in the Eastern Cape, Limpopo, Zimbabwe, all over the country. They can't come back to work because our borders are closed. And it's a constant. Comedy is not the right word to use, but it's a constant continuation of errors that happens from the government side, which and from private sector, which create more and more obstacles along the way. And I think government hasn't really thought out the repercussions of their actions to the full extent of the economy and the economic factors that relate to it.
Well, first of all, I want to commend you on really taking a stand and making an effort not to just go, you know what, let's thin out the herd. I know it can't be easy as a business owner to make that decision.
I mean, today I see today that the TERS grant has been extended for another 6 weeks, which I think is a wise move on behalf of the government. I think that's breaking news as of today. I think the hospitality industry are in desperate need of that. But the process of TERS has been so flawed from the beginning that even though the thought of the relief is there, the actualization and the implementation of that relief on ground level is maybe flawed. I mean, we all heard the president give the announcement that we're going to be giving 500 million rand in stimulus, and this and that and this and that, and we all thought, wow, this is a great. I mean, I'm sure you saw the news feeds flocking with, my president, he's my man, we salute you. Sir, you've done the right thing. I don't see those people today writing those posts on social media. I think that those posts are something of the past, and I think it's due to the fact that those promises and that creation of hope that was put in the minds of the people is very dangerous, because once people get hope in their minds, it creates an expectation, and when there's not a delivery of that hope at the end of the day, I think it creates the issue that people are then lost hope. They then not only lose hope, they lose control of their dignity that they had towards law enforcement, or the government or the controlling body or the employer. It breaks trust between the government and the employer. It breaks trust between myself and insurance. I mean, we're fighting a massive battle with our insurance company at the moment. That a company that we pay our premiums to every single month to protect us in a time of crisis. Now is the time of crisis, and the insurance company is turning around to us and saying, "Well, actually, you know what? We can't cover you because the pandemic and COVID was not the reason and the result for this lockdown. It was the government."
That's absurd.
And that does it's the most absurd thing I've ever heard in my whole issue. It's like you and I walking in the rain, and I open the umbrella, and the hail comes down and smashes the umbrella, and we're in the middle of a storm, and you say to me, the damage was caused by the hail for the umbrella. I can't claim. When we both know it was the storm that caused the hail. Without the storm, there wouldn't have been the hail. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, yeah.
It's just absurd to me. And how Sitdown and how Mutual and how all these insurers are doing this at the moment is just a deplorable type of situation at the moment. I mean, if you, on the one hand, you've got here's a corporate illustration. Here you got Outsurance, Discovery, and Auto and General that say we agree with the FSCA's ruling that COVID claims need to be paid out and assessed. Three companies, and I would call Auto and General, Discovery, and Outsurance respectable companies in the marketplace. And then you've got other respectable companies that have been in the industry for 100 years. Sitdown, Old Mutual, Bright, Guardrisk, that are saying, no, it's not. We're not paying. When every authority has said, listen, guys, COVID was the result of this quarantine you put on. Because if it wasn't, we wouldn't be walking around with masks today. We wouldn't be sitting social distancing. My restaurant would be flourishing, and we wouldn't be sitting in the situation. And to say that the government had other options other than the lockdown is also not a true story. The fact that we have to do these things, and people say to us, well, we are. What did the insurers expect us to do? Did they expect us to go and defy government and carry on trading business during the lockdown and get arrested?
Yeah,
I mean,
it makes no sense.
What it makes no sense whatsoever. So it's a very, very, very strange dichotomy that's in place at the moment.
Yeah, that would have been my next question with regards to insurance, because I've heard that some of the companies aren't paying out as they should be, and it's really sad to hear that. On the bright side, I'm glad to hear there are some people that are sticking true to their word, but it doesn't really matter to those people that are busy losing their businesses. As far as industries that are really badly affected, I think the entertainment and the restaurant industry really, really does have it bad, and it's extremely unfortunate.
I'm 100% in agreement with you, and I think just to clarify the insurance issue as well is that the in the hospitality, leisure, and entertainment hotel industry, we look for cover that is specific for our specific market. So a restaurant like myself would not phone Hippo and ask Hippo to get the cheapest quote for us, the Hippo little ad on TV, and then cover ourselves, or phone, call 1,000, 3,000 now, and we will get you the lowest insurance quote. We're not that type of industry that can allow those issues to be put in place. We have too much in place in terms of public liability. We have issues in terms of food, health, safety, hospitality, guests. There's too many factors involved in the hospitality leisure industry. So when we get given a policy that is specifically designed to protect us from these pandemics and these issues of loss of tourist attraction, loss of access to property, loss of tourists, loss of revenue, we expect the insurers to protect us because we pay our premiums and we continue to pay our premiums. So it's a great shock to us when suddenly they don't come back and say, oh, well, you know what, we're not going to honor our premiums to you. Yeah. And you wouldn't expect that from companies that have been in existence in South Africa for 100 years. And I mean, the insurer's answer is, well, we never anticipated this type of pandemic. That's bullshit. Sorry to say that on your show, but I mean, it's absolute rubbish. They've been around for 100 years. They've seen the worst of the worst in every single market around the world. And there's a trend setting that is in place that they estimate and calculate and formulate and reinsure themselves around the world to compensate themselves and protect them from these exact events that happen in South Africa. I'll just give you an example. In 2014, I mean, there was an Ebola outbreak in West Africa. Okay, so take the story and set the scene. Is in the country of Sierra Leone, there's an Ebola outbreak. The president decides to enforce a lockdown to stop the spread of the disease and to get the healthcare framework of Sierra Leone ready for the upcoming disease and get them ready for the virus that was coming to town. That's exactly the same what happened in South Africa. The president put us in lockdown or in quarantine and he told us he's getting the healthcare system ready to wait for this mass pandemic of disease about to hit us. Santam Insurance, through their division Emerald in Sierra Leone, pays out all the business interruption claims in Sierra Leone. Not in South Africa at all, but in a different country. Santam, a South African insurer, exactly the same situation, says, oops, we don't pay out for pandemics. Yeah, that's mad. But yet, case study 5 years ago, they changed. And ironically, the person that made the statement, which is on the Santam website, still today, 5 years ago, on the 25th of September, is the same person that makes a statement now on the 5th of July, saying a total different story to what he said 5 years ago. So the law hasn't changed. Santam's policy hasn't changed. My premiums haven't changed. Why is Santam and Old Mutual and Guardrisk and all of them are changing their tune right now?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's madness and extremely unfortunate. I mean, it's exactly like you say. It's a very specific type of insurance that you go and seek out for this exact purpose, and then to have them just decline to pay it, I think it definitely needs some investigation and someone should do something about it, and I really hope someone does. Unfortunately, for a lot of people, by then it would be too late, which I think really, really sucks. Is there anything, are there any tips or recommendations to restaurant owners that you maybe have to help them navigate these times, that some information that might not have gotten to them?
Well, I think the one point of the industry that restaurant owners have to look at is the word innovation. Every other industry that has gone back to work have gone back to and I realized this the other day, they've gone back to their normal course of action that they used to do. Other than maybe social distancing or working from home, they've not really had to make any changes in terms of how they attract their customers, how they get their customers to their place, what their food offerings are. And I think restaurants need to look at innovation seriously and say, how do we formulate a new business strategy around what we've got at the moment, not what we had, what we've got at the moment. Whether we have, I mean, I see many restaurants posting saying, and including myself, you know, it's a Friday afternoon and my restaurant would have had 800 people at it or 500 people at it, and we've got 10 people at it. Yes, that is a realistic issue that's happening at the moment. But what we need to do is say, listen, those 5 people that we've got at the moment, how do we deal with them? What do we deal with them? What do we offer them? Do we say to them, guys, we've got a menu that's got from here to Timbuktu? Or do we offer and say, listen, you know what, we've only got 4 items on our menu. These are our best 4 items on the menu. There's special items on the menu. They're at a reduced rate because we understand people don't have money at the moment, and we value you as a customer, and we would like to offer you these items. It means that it helps just down the whole food chain of things. The other thing also is, I think it's very important for restaurateurs to communicate with their suppliers, communicate with their landlords, communicate with all interested parties that are involved in their supply chain, and tell them what's happening. What's happening? Am I doing well? Am I not doing well? Am I closing? Am I not closing? Am I doing takeaways? Am I doing sit down? You know, and not hide away from their suppliers because they don't know what to say to their suppliers. Embrace it, because the uncertainty and the anxiety of not knowing what your supplier is thinking on the other side, and vice versa, creates so much more hostility than what can be done. If you have opportunities of rent negotiations, do it early and face it head on with your landlord in the beginning. Don't go and pay huge rentals when you can't afford it. Rather to get deferment plans in place, rather make a negotiation with the landlord, because the landlord is also human. He's also a person that has the same problems you has, same bond to pay, the same food to put on his table for his family, and going through the same challenges you're going through. So not all of you are going to succeed at that, but at least give it a try from the early start and communicate. And the other thing is communicate with your clients. Tell them and create relevance at all times. Relevance in terms of not only yourself, but relevance in terms of all the other businesses around you. If you go to our bellezar.co.za website or our Facebook account, you'll see we promote in our region, we promote competitors' restaurants, we promote competitors' products, we promote the beverage industry, we promote anything else that maybe is not relative to us. And because, you know what, I'm neighbors with a food franchise. And we were in discussion the other day, and I'm like, you know, if one customer comes here on a Saturday and has a burger with you, and the next Saturday he comes and has a burger with me, at least the two of us have been able to get a burger each. If we don't do anything about it, that customer might go elsewhere, and neither of us get a burger. But me promoting you one week and you promoting me the other week, we collaborating and making it work so that it makes it the ecosystem where we are, especially in the tourist related towns which are reliant on tourists and the locals to support them. We need to understand that our profits and our margins are going to be shared. We need to understand that our business is going to be shared. But it's time to share and time to unite and to make sure that our businesses make it through this pandemic and come out brighter and stronger and more innovative at the other end.
I think those are some really wise words, and I really hope a lot of the restaurants take your advice. Any parting comments, something you might want to say to people out there? I know a lot of people are afraid to go to restaurants because they're afraid of the virus, but apologies. Just got a phone call. I know a lot of people out there are afraid currently to go to restaurants because of Corona, but I think a lot of them should realize that yes, restaurants are much cleaner than other places they would go. Is there anything you'd like to leave people with today?
Well, I think public perception is something is a very difficult thing to change, especially with the rate of infections and the statistics of the infections that are peaking around us. So to change people's perception of a restaurant now versus the actuality of the disease that's happening in our country at the moment, I think the dichotomy of the two is a very difficult thing to get established out of people's minds. And no matter how much preaching I tell them or you tell them, I think that people will have that perception in their minds. I can tell you that the restaurants have strict protocol in place. We have strict sanitizing in place. I mean, my hands, if you look at my hands, are so raw of sanitizing on a daily basis. I don't think I can even take more sanitizing in terms of a restaurant owner. I mean, we prescribe to sanitize every 20 minutes, which no retail store. Do you see anybody walking into a shopping center sanitizing every 20 minutes? I mean, restaurant industry are doing that. So restaurants are safe places to be, and I think it's more important for the customer to feel comfortable at the restaurant. If the customer does not feel comfortable at the restaurant and feels his safety is at risk at any point in time, then the customer I don't think should, enjoy the restaurant for its hospitality and move on, and take a takeaway instead. Support the industry in another way. Order a takeaway if you're worried about things. Get a delivery taken off to the restaurant. But very importantly, support local. Don't go and support the thing that's not your restaurant, that's been your restaurant that you've gone to for the last 10 years of your life. Don't hide away from that restaurant. Support them. Even if they're selling, I mean, I have a restaurant down the road from me that they can't serve alcohol, they can't serve beer, but they're selling peak caps to survive. Go and buy a peak cap. I know it's not the one that you want to have in your fashion wardrobe, but buying a peak cap allows them to be able to continue generating revenue and for them to be able to have staff and continue working. And do what you can to help them. Buy in advance. A lot of them have vouchers in advance where you can buy now system and use later. We all got timeshare coming up or holidays coming up in December. We hope that we won't be in this corona pandemic in December. But if you can spare 100 Rand for one of your restaurants, buy a voucher now for that restaurant and make them say, listen, I know in December holidays I'm going to come and I'm going to enjoy my 100 Rand meal with you. And that every 100 Rand makes a difference and paying it forward to the whole situation.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I really appreciate you taking the time to speak to me, and good luck. And just I appreciate you taking the time.
No problem at all. And I hope you stay safe, and most importantly at the moment, stay sane. Sane and safe are the most two important elements at this present moment in time in our country.
I will do my best. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you, Andre. Have a good day to you. Cheers.
You too. Cheers. Bye.